right, so let's see if this thing works. I think it does. Yes. Who has ever played a game? Ah, yes. We all play games, but even more so than you think. Actually, you're playing a game right now, all of you. There's hidden games in life, basically, and we always play them. And whether that's, the big game of life, living your life, or whether it's making art or building a business, there's always something going on that basically has a lot of the, I guess you could call it the characteristics of games. So, and as a matter of fact, even the small things like, you sitting here making it through this talk is probably a little game that you're playing. Hopefully, we're going to have a victory at the end. Basically, if you play these games well in your life, then you will achieve victory. But with a victory for those games also come new opportunities to play new games, maybe better games. And I'd like to invite you today to take a moment to think about your life situation. Which games are you playing? It's probably a dozen or so. And then another question is, are you having fun with those games? Are you making progress? Are you learning things? It's a good question, right? Or maybe you're bored or stuck, overwhelmed. Maybe you're even at the wrong table, right? This is an important question. And I want to sort of talk a little bit today about how you actually have the power to choose the games you play. And you also have the power to design the games you play. So this choosing and designing the games in your life is basically gives you the ability to actually never fail, because if you play the game or if you design the game well, then you're basically virtually guaranteed that you're going to have victory, right? So let's take a closer look at what makes a good game. The first ingredient is that you need an epic quest. Every game has some sort of call to adventure. Why do we play it in the first place? What's the holy grail of the game? Playing it is going to be painful, it's going to be hard. You're going to have to put in some real effort, and serious challenges are going to come your way. So this sort of sacrifice is needed, and an epic quest really needs an epic sacrifice. So why bother, right? Why just not eat some pizza instead? Here's the thing. If you have a mediocre quest, so it's like, well, let's eat some pizza, then of course the sacrifice is a lot smaller, but you will actually slide down a slippery slope where the sacrifice you're going to be making is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The pain will come. So if you have a Netflix binge-watching day, you're going to sit on the couch all day, you're going to eat pizza and watch Netflix. That's great for one day, maybe 2 days, maybe. The question then is, what does it take to get you off your couch? What does it take? Is it a deadline the next day? Or is it an angry client on the phone? Or is it you not being able to pay the rent next month? It's a good question to ask. And the point is that you're going to feel the pain anyway. So it's better to have like a big epic quest, something that's sort of a holy grail, something that you can really, that makes the suffering worthwhile, I would say. So another question is that you can ask is like, what kind of problems do you want to have? What is the sort of effort or the pain that you're willing to endure? And the bigger the epic quest, the better these problems will be. A good epic quest, basically, it gets you excited. You want to wake up in the morning and get to work. Not necessarily talking about work, but anything, there's all kinds of games in your life, not just related to your career. It should be deeply meaningful. It should be important to you. And it should be very difficult, but not impossible. And I'll come back to some of these points later. The bottom line for this epic quest is that you need to choose something that's really good for you, that makes you want to put in the effort. But maybe it's also good for your community, right? Like we're sitting here, what's good for this community? At work, what's good for your company? With your family, what's good for the family, friends, everything. But maybe also it might be something that's good for the world. Why not? And consider that a good epic quest is good not just today, but also next week and a year from now, 10 years from now. So really take that into account. So aim high, have an appropriately epic quest. That's the first ingredient. And you see Elon Musk, I think, is a good example. He basically wants to save the human race and have a plan B in case the Earth falls apart. All right, number 2. A good game has a magic circle. Every game has a sort of a magical quality. When you step into that magic circle, you play. And when you exit it, you're back to normal. So this is good. A good example is sports. The time starts, the referee basically blows the whistle, it's game time. Everybody gets going, the rules are clear, basically people know what to do, and when the game ends, then it's over. Life usually is not so clear. It's a bit of a fuzzy, the circle is a bit more fuzzy. For example, when does work end and family time begin, right? It's not always clear. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm working all the time in my head. It's like there's a lot of stuff going on, even in the evenings or whatever. So the boundaries are not clear. Another example for creatives is when we are waiting for inspiration to strike. You know that feeling when you're sort of just browsing or something, or you're waiting for something and then you sort of want to get to work, but you're not really working, but you're sort of working. That's the fuzziness I'm talking about. So for a good game, you need a clear moment of crossing the threshold. This is the hero's journey. Maybe you know it a little bit. The hero basically goes from the known to the unknown, and there's a point in time when they cross the threshold. That's the beginning of the adventure. If you define the boundary for your adventure, then it's going to be a lot easier to get into the right mindset. Sorry. So basically, every game needs a time and place. It needs a start and an end. And if you create little rituals, then it's easier to get into the right mindset to actually play it. So some examples could be that you sit down at work, at your desk, then you work. No Facebook, no nothing. That's just work. When you get up, you stop work. That's an example. You set a clear boundary for the game you're playing. You could also say every morning after your first coffee, you basically review your to-do list for the day. And maybe you pick the top priority, the most important task for that day, and you start with that task. That's a clear entry point into actually playing that game. The Pomodoro method, maybe you're familiar with that. It's like set a timer, 25 minutes. Then you do the focused work. You eliminate all distractions. After 25 minutes, you set another timer for 5 minutes, and then you just relax and do whatever you want. And then you repeat that cycle. So when you're conscious of those boundaries of the magic circle, then you're going to basically train your brain to get into the mood of playing. And then inspiration will strike when you want it to. Number 3, you need clear rules. All right, so we all know that every game has rules. You roll the dice, and then something happens. Chess pieces, they have a specific rule for movement. You score points in a very specific way. And of course, life is way more complicated than that. It's hard to figure out the rules of life, right? It's not easy. But because you're the designer of your games, you can still define the rules you're going to play by. And these rules are actually your core values. This is sort of the thing that you live by, the rules that you live by. So what are your core values? It's a very important question to ask yourself. What's important to you? What's really important? What are your priorities? What are the things that you would never compromise? These are your rules. These are the things you need to sort of live by. And if you do that, and if you make decisions from your core values, then every decision will be easier, and you won't waste any time backtracking choices because it's just clear where you're going. So, very good way of moving through games. Number 4 is that you need clear progress. So it's all good, you have this massive epic quest, I'm going to save humanity, and how do you know you're on track? Well, a good game has very clear and timely feedback. You know it when you make any progress, right? You score points, or there's progress bars, or there's whatever is in the game. In real life, that's also possible. It's just that you need to define it. Remember, you're the game designer. So create a plan, make your milestones, your big milestones, define them in advance, write them down, make that plan, and then build little tasks out of each milestone to figure out what you need to do to achieve it. And then at some point you can check these things off. And that's a really, really good motivation to keep going and to see some progress. So another question then is, what does victory actually look like? How do you know you've succeeded or failed? Also for this, I would really advise to write these things down in advance. There's a concept called key performance indicators. It's a bit of a business concept, but in games it's the same thing. Your health bar is a very important key performance indicator. Well, what's your health bar in real life? It could be your energy level, it could be something else. Consider these things, and if you have a set of 5 or 6 key performance indicators for your life, then it's going to be very clear how you're doing. That also means that you can fail. So it's a bit scary to write these things down. If you define your outcome or your victory, then yeah, if you don't reach it, if you say, okay, my goal is to feel energetic every day, and you don't, then you've failed. You've clearly failed. That's scary, but it's okay to fail, and it's much better to know when you're failing than to just have a fuzzy feeling about, well, doesn't feel right, but I don't exactly know what it is. So define this in advance. Then another thing, this is Bitcoin. What makes a good KPI? Well, I would argue that Bitcoin value is not a good KPI because it's completely outside of your control. It's going up and down wildly every day. Not something you want to measure your life on, or it's not a game you want to play. I would instead say focus on the things inside your control. So if you take Bitcoin price as an example, well, that's out of your control, but maybe if you say, okay, I'm going to set a budget for my expenses every month. I'm going to set a budget and I'm going to stick to it. That's perfectly within your control. It's your wallet. You decide how to spend your money. This is a much better KPI than something external. So a good KPI is something that's really relevant, important, and something that's in your control. Then last but not least, a retry button. A good game has a very decent challenge. It shouldn't be too easy. It shouldn't be too hard. It should definitely not be impossible. I would say it's better to have too much challenge than too little because you're going to get bored. But basically, over here you can see this is sort of the flow diagram, the skill level. If you have low skill and low challenge, you're going to sit on the couch eating pizza, watching Netflix. If you have a high skill level and low challenge, then you're just going to relax and cruise it through. Where you want to be is high skill and high challenge. That's where you're going to be in the zone. It's going to be the point where you're in flow. That's the moment when time stops and when you lose yourself, basically, in your work. If you're not highly skilled, but the challenge is still high, then you're going to get a little bit, I guess you're going to feel some anxiety, and you're going to have some stress around your life. But I would still say it's better to be here in the top part than in the bottom. It helps to know that failing is actually part of the game. You're going to fail again and again and again and again. You're going to be punched down. You're going to have to get up, dust yourself off, and really try again. It's easy to say that. And believe me, I know. I've been entrepreneur for 13 years, and I've felt like this guy a lot of times. And every time it's painful and annoying, and no matter what I say, that's not going to make it any easier. Again, I would say focus on the things within your control. Some things are just wildly outside of your control. If a client is unhappy because they just got up in the wrong way that morning or whatever, that's outside of your control. What you can do is things like learning from experiences, putting in effort, shipping things. These things are within your control. And even though you might not get all the Instagram likes that you want, it's still important to keep shipping those Instagram pictures or whatever it is. And the thing is, it gets easier over time, right? You get better over time. And I've seen countless times that, with persistence and effort really come great results. And the trying again, the retry button is critical. Do you know this game? It's Flappy Bird. Anyone played it? Who played this? Nobody played it? It's one of the hardest games in the world, right? It's like the first time you play it, you're going to have 0 points. And the second time, again. And the third time, and fourth time, and the 10th time, you might have 1 point or 2 points. The retry button is critical in this game. And for your life games, make sure you always have a retry button. You don't want a game over state. You always want to be able to try again. And then when you make that part of the game, then it's going to be easier to keep going and dust yourself off and try again. So the goal is not a flawless victory. The goal is continuous improvement. So fail well and keep at it. So there you go. You're now a game designer. I challenge you to take some time today and reflect on the games in your life. Do you have an epic quest? Where's your magic circle? Where are the boundaries of that magic circle? How can you trigger that? Do you have clear rules for playing? What do you stand for? How do you measure your progress? And do you have a retry button? Figure all of this out, and I'm sure I'm going to see you at the high score list. So, good luck and have fun. Thanks.